Hello, I'm Ed Bartlett, founder of Costume, and welcome to the very first episode of Can Do. Whether you're a friend, a customer, a follower, or completely new to the brand, thanks for joining us. And if you're thinking, does the world really need another apparel brand, or for that matter, podcast? Well, you might be surprised to hear that I agree. That being said, the entire reason for Costume's existence is shaking things up and doing things differently, be it tackling sustainability through our pre-order model or creating the kind of content that supports and encourages cyclists of all kinds. Our aim is to hopefully make you slow down and think more deeply about what cycling really means to you. And this is where Can Do comes in. Aside from being the title of the podcast, Can Do is an umbrella for a whole range of forthcoming output, including short films, long-form writing and interviews, rider support, events and more. It's really part of the DNA of Costume, and in no way is it part of a cynical marketing ploy to get you to buy more of our stuff. And jokes aside, the real motivation is more of a collective frustration with what seems to be just an unquenchable thirst for aspiration that seems to be driving all of the cycling-related content out there. And that's not just from brands, but also from content creators and even a lot of consumers. And don't get me wrong, aspiration is no bad thing, and in fact it can be a very positive motivational tool. But as humans, we constantly compare ourselves with others, and more often than not, it seems to be many of us are left feeling bad about our own endeavours as a result. The aim of Can Do isn't to shun aspiration or to make it a swear word, but to try and make it relatable to as many people as possible. And that's whether winning to you is being competitive in an ultra race or just getting dressed and leaving the house. Cycling means so much to so many of us, and I guarantee every single one of us has a story to tell. And who knows, maybe we can share your story one day. And so it is that we launched Can Do with a short film about Thom, which has already prompted some unexpected and unexpectedly moving feedback. Thom is someone I know through riding with Audax Club Bristol, and a couple of years back he kindly invited a few of us to ride to South Wales from Bristol to join him on a little wild camp in his favourite local spot. And aside from the great company and scenery, what really stuck with me is how these fantastic adventures can sometimes be right on your doorstep. And so, when it came to shooting some authentic images for our recent cargo bib campaign, we decided to stage a rerun with photographer Fergus Coyle in tow. You can find the film on our YouTube channel, which is linked in the description, or just search Costume Films with a K. The audio clips from the film were lifted from the interview recorded for this podcast, which is really beautifully led by Matt Swaine, another friend, an outdoor and cycling journalist and a keen Audaxer who also happened to be on that original trip with Thom. If you like what you see in here, make sure you give us a follow and also maybe share with one other person you think might enjoy. Our next Can Do content is a day in the life of Jess Golding, except the day in question is partway through her epic 3-week, 4,000 kilometre journey to the North Cape. Until then, thanks for listening and I hope you enjoy.
Right, so we're going to start with, do you want to introduce us and tell us a little bit about how you got into long distance riding? Tell us who you are, how you got into cycling.
So Bore da, Thom Dewey. I'm Thom with an H, and cycling's always kind of been something that I did from little kid. I had a break kind of early 20s through to kind of when I was 30, but it was always like the way of getting around. It was a paper round. It was having fun. It was mucking about, making jumps from planks and bricks, and then I got really good at drinking beer and eating fast food, and stopped cycling. And then I had, when I kind of hit 30, what I thought was, I was convinced I had like stomach cancer, basically, because I kept getting pains in my stomach and feeling off. And that started then like quite a long period of about a year or so of cutting various things out, trying different diets to see if there was anything that was triggering anything off. Some rather interesting medical things with the word SCOPY in them. Wow. And then, kind of root of it all was anxiety. Diagnosed general anxiety, and particularly with sort of health anxiety coming out of it. And you think, where's this going? Well, one of the offshoots of that was like I dropped 3.5 stone during that period, and thought, you know what, I'm going to start riding a bike again. And in my head, I was like, yeah, I used to ride bikes all the time back in the Fens. It was flat. I was great at it. And like living in the South Wales valleys, I then got a bike, the cycle to work scheme, Bought a cyclocross bike because it looked like fun, and yeah, started riding, and it was really bloody hard, really
Was
bloody
it?
hard, yeah. And I used to sort of ride the lanes. I had little markers, and I'd sort of ride the lanes, and I remember kind of going out, and I'd ride sort of 2 miles out, turn around and ride back. Well, the 2 miles out was like slightly uphill, then a really steep downhill, and then I'd stop and turn around. And quite often I'd like take a Mars bar with me, and I'd eat the Mars bar at 2 miles to give myself the energy to ride the 2 miles back home, because back home there was quite a steep hill to go up. And for the first 6 or 9 months, I couldn't ride up the hill, so I'd get up and walk. And this older guy would come past me, like 6 times out of 10, and we'd ride together, and I'd try and ride with him up the hill, and then he'd just go. So I was like, I'm going to ride up this bloody hill. So that was kind of like my marker, and I did eventually ride up the bloody hill, and I stopped eating Mars bars at 2 miles. And then kind of cycling slightly further and further, then I started to bump into people in a figurative sense, and someone said, oh, come and ride with a local club. So started to ride with a local club, and that was kind of fun. Started to find out new places. The club used to do a Sunday sort of cafe ride, and there was like the old guys then would take you down some really, really interesting little lanes, and that to me, I was like, this is what I like. This is what I don't like, the super fast smashing it down the road. Although that did come in the end, and I ended up kind of doing road racing and time trialing. But yeah, I really enjoyed kind of like the exploring of the places and hearing from these guys at the times, they were like in the 60s, talking about where they were and what was here and what was there. And that was like, okay, well, I know nothing about really where I live in that sense. I need to kind of explore it a little bit more. And then the Audaxes used to be kind of held in sort of reverential tones. Oh, so-and-so's off to do an Audax this weekend. That's a biggie, isn't it? That's a biggie. And then you kind of realise, well, actually, I'm riding those kind of distances on the cafe ride, and it's not too dissimilar. So I plucked up the courage to go and enter one. And yeah, and it was really hard because it was a really hilly one, which I hadn't realised. I hadn't realised all this backstory of the different codes that went alongside.
So explain to people what is an Audax. Let's just start with that. Explain to people who don't know.
So I'll give kind of my take on it. So I came into it thinking like, what is an Audax? How do you pronounce the word Audax? Is it Audi? Is it Audax? Like an Audi? So I was like, no, apparently it's not. It's Audax. And then, what do you do? And it's like, well, you pay quite a small amount of money, and you kind of turn up for a calendar ride. Again, these are all new kind of terms to me. And you turn up, you're given a card that's got some information points in it. At the time, you were given like a paper route sheet as well, which told you, where to make your turns, where you should be heading, and where control points were. I was like, well, what's a control point? And it's like, well, you see someone, you get a little stamp in your card. Oh, that's pretty cool, and that kind of the set distances that were there, like 100k, 2 miles ish. That's manageable. Oh, great! And there's food stops along the way, even better, And then you realise that there are other distances that you can ride, and other ways of doing that. And then you realise there's badges, and that was like the massive draw for me. It was like, just so on badges.
So what was your first badge that you sewed on? Then?
My first badge was like 100k.
Yeah.
And I did that Audax with, I actually did it with my mum and my stepdad, I was about to say, husband, yes, a husband. And that was one organised out Chippenham way.
Can you remember which one it was?
Yeah, it was the Flapjack. Was
it? Okay, which is a good well-known one, isn't it?
Yeah, which is now Flesh's Flapjack. And I just remember that there was so much food. And it was just like every time you stopped at a point, there was just like, here's all this cake. It was like, fantastic. Or beans on toast and cups of tea. And it was just really friendly. Yeah. No one, there was no kind of like, oh, you've not got such and such kit, or oh, you've not got so-and-so bike. It was just like, we're all going the same way. We're all out for a ride. Some people are going to be faster than others. Everyone's out there for kind of different reasons, but the same holistic reason.
So was that community thing important? Did you meet loads of people who had that kind of same mindset? Or
I did, and it was interesting to me to kind of compare the riding I did on the Audax with the riding I did with the Road Club. The Road Club kind of brought out and kind of steered, particularly by the old guys, riding etiquette on the road, keeping steady pace, two by twos, calling out when there was hazards, and Audax riding kind of took that, but then made allowances so you didn't have to ride with people if you didn't want to, and you kind of took your own pace when you were riding, and there would be some people who would ride the same kind of pace as you, and so you might end up just riding with them, and often they could be complete strangers, and that's how I ended up meeting quite a lot of people who I now call friends, just because we'd happened to be riding at the same pace on an Audax, and it was a kind of like you're in control of your own space. If you don't like the person you're riding with, you don't have to ride with them. You're not forced to kind of sit with this person the entire day.
I find if you've ridden with someone on one ride, you're kind of friends for life.
Yes, totally.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It might have just been one ride you've done together, but you kind of trust each other. You've looked after each other. It means something, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Even to things like sharing jokes and being quite open. I mean, I talked a bit in the beginning about my anxiety side of stuff, and what I quite quickly found was that I was drawn to, or other people drawn to, vice versa. Just being able to talk about that cycling actually helps me, kind of like mentally unwind. It doesn't have to necessarily be like an Audax or a longer ride. It could be like going out for 40 minutes, whatever, after work, and just that kind of act. That sort of meditative act of sort of constant pedaling, because you're focusing on that, you allow your body kind of time to do that. Gives me, my head, chance to just kind of just process through and tick things off, while at the same time burning off a little bit of energy and just settling in. And in the main, I'd invariably come back from a ride far happier than I left. And it was, often the biggest thing, and it's massively cliched, but the biggest thing was going, right, I'm going to go to the door and I'm going to go ride my bike. And sometimes the weather was like dreadful, but you're like, it's going to be dreadful, but I'm only going out for an hour or so. I'm going to come back, and then I'll have done the ride. It would have been nice, and I will genuinely come back and feel like I have achieved something. And that achievement can have been, it might be like 10 miles of mucking around in the woods, or it might have been 20 miles of going sort of out and back along a little sort of loop that I use. But it didn't matter how shit it was when you left. You kind of felt good when you came back.
Being on a bike, it's a happiness machine, isn't it?
It is.
You just come back feeling better. So Audax got you into bike packing as well. So tell us a bit, how did that process happen?
Talking about kind of friends on the bikes and then friends off the bikes. I'd always loved camping. I used to love camping when I was younger. Cubs, Scouts, Air Cadets, and then kind of longer distance walking with like schoolmates, DV. And it was, it was a nice thing to do, walking, and then you do it by bike and you can go further, if you want to. Or, sometimes you end up doing a lot of walking when you're bike packing, depending where you go. But that was like, okay, I'm going to start off doing this thing, and so what am I going to use as my sort of background? Well, I like maps, so let's see sort of what's localish, and let's kind of pick a spot. And my sort of first kind of foray into doing it was going to ride up a hill, which is probably about 5 or 6 miles from home. You can see my house from the hillside. I'm going to ride up there. I'm going to take all my camping stuff, and I'm going to bivvy out on the side of the hill and do that. And
did you do that by yourself, that first one?
Yeah, just took myself away. The amount of planning that kind of went into it, I look back on now and I think, wow, here I am so many years down the line, and I still plan, but I really planned that first one. Planned kind of like what kit I was going to take, where it was going to go on the bike, where I was going to do my route, and what was going to happen if things went wrong. And there's a couple of things that kind of stick in my mind about it. One of which was I planned all this stuff really quite intensely, and ridden out there, and then realised that to get to where I wanted to sleep, I had to lift my bike and kit over quite a high wall and quite a high gate. Not because it was trespass, but because that was the forestry management system at the time. And I'd kind of come back from having my back broken in 2 places, car driver knocked me off. So all of a sudden it's dark and I'm with my bike and all my kit, and I've got loads of kit all over the bike. It's like when you've got everything for any possible occasion. And I was like, shit, I'm going to have to lift this really heavy bike, and I'm really concerned about my back over this wall or over this gate. I was like, but I'm here now, so I'm going to deal with this problem. So it did, and yeah, camped up there and on the side of the hill in the night, and 2 things kind of stuck with me. The first one was waking up in the night in my bivvy bag with a slug on my face and just being like, well, what's this? Like, oh, it's a slug. And then, yeah, the inevitable 3 a.m. need to go for a pee. And it's like, right, okay. And thinking, oh my God, is that wolves next to me or wild dogs? And it's like, no, it's just bracken. But just the shadowy shapes at night kind of just play with your mind. Yeah, and then the next morning, just that kind of feeling of being really, really sort of happy with what I'd done.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, packing everything back down onto the bike and just rolling back home. And again, like I said, like 5-6 miles. You know.
So let's break all that. Let's break the planning a bit down into all those bits. So you obviously you love maps, don't you? What makes a good, if somebody's doing it for the first time, what makes a really good wild camping spot? How do you identify it? How do you find it?
I would say probably just be familiar. Don't feel you've got to go out and push new boundaries with what you're looking for. For me, it was like quite often I would have seen the place where I ended up camping before, either having gone out with some mates just like mountain biking or just cycling, kind of thought, oh, that looks good. A couple of spots off canals that I've seen, like towpaths that I've seen. Where I ended up that first time was a hill that would use mountain biking. And just kind of be comfortable with that aspect. It didn't really, it was nice to kind of look on the map and think, oh, it's there, and the planning about what I was going to do. But I already kind of knew what was there. I wasn't trying to push new boundaries or find new places to go. Excuse me. It was all that was relatively known. It doesn't change anything that kind of first time you do it, of it being like, this is a little bit.
Still feels
this is a little bit out.
intimidating.
It does, yeah. And it feels you are still doing a new thing, and kind of dealing with that brought its own sort of set of challenges. But there was comfort in some things making it easier.
So you want to think. I guess you need to think a little bit about protection from the weather, don't you?
Yeah.
You want to be away from other people. You don't want to be spotted or found, and you kind of want to wake up with a lovely view as well. I mean, you've taken me to a fantastic spot, and it's got we're not going to tell people where it is because that's not how you do it, but it's got that fantastic lake. You wake up with a fantastic view. But I guess you've got that insight now, haven't you? You spot things as you go.
And that site's an interesting one because so I came across that particular pond by mountain biking with a friend and just thinking, hey, do you know what? This is quite a good site. There's a little bit of flat area by it. It's not too far from home. It's very quiet, and you've got that ability to be away from people, but at the same time not be too far. And once you've done that first time, once you've had that first go, you think, hey, do you know what? Yeah, this is okay. This is okay. And so the second time then at that site was like a bit more personal than the first time, because I kind of knew what was there from cycling through it. Oh, okay, interesting. The second time there when I went and camped was like, okay, I'm going to go to this place. I know this spot, I can get water from there. What else do I need? I'll take a flapjack or something for breakfast. Going to take like my little bivvy bag and bivvy bags. Started off with a army surplus one, which was massive, but pretty much protected you for everything. And kind of like then wind down to going sort of quite lightweight, because it wasn't so much fun lifting that really heavy bike and kit over that fence that time. And the second time then up there by the lake was was nice to kind of just be by myself there. But then I wanted to share that experience with the people. And so, yeah, invited some friends along, I think yourselves being one of them. And there's lots of little things that's kind of nice to point out around the area. I mean, I like the history and the heritage of the place. So being able to kind of see like, okay, well, this is like this because that's where the spoil tips from when it was mining was kind of dug out. Yeah. The reason the lake is like it is because it was used as like a balance reservoir to kind of run machinery, but now it's just a nice, quiet site.
Yeah. It's got that feeling of wilderness, doesn't it? You feel like you're much further away than you would assume for the distance that you've covered, wouldn't you? You feel like a long way away. So for people who've never done it before, if you just you're used to riding a bike out, what are those bits of kit you need to get you wild camping? 5 things that we need to...
Right, the 5 things. So if you're going to do it by bike, have a bike. So we'll rule that one out.
Yeah, that's assumed.
So I would say if you've got anything that you can kind of like multi-purpose, then that's a really good thing to do. So don't feel you have to have like one piece of kit for one job, because then you'll end up taking 2 pieces of kit for 2 different jobs. Yeah. So anything that you're comfortable with just having that you can wear, like a coat, you might want to sleep in it as well as wear it if it's a bit fresh in the morning, because it will be fresher in the morning than you think.
Do you take you got your bivvy bag? Do you take a sleeping bag?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So okay, back to 5.
Bivvy bag.
So some form of shelter. Yeah. Whether it's a bivvy bag, whether it's a tarp, whether it's a small tent. So shelter. Yeah. Sleeping bag. Yeah. Sleeping mat.
And what? Because those can be big things. So what kind of sleeping mat have you got?
Physically big.
What kind of sleeping mat have you got? Because I've got I've got one that really packs down small. Yeah. Which one do you take with you?
Mine actually doesn't pack that small because I wanted to be comfortable and actually be able to sleep. Yeah. So I went through the whole thing of I'm going to go ultra light, ultra tiny, and sleep on something that basically is like a small inflatable crisp packet. Yeah. And I had a really crap night's sleep because I'm a side sleeper. I'm bony things. So now I've ended up with one that it's slightly insulated, so that keeps warm. It's 4 inches thick, 10 centimetres in new money. It's extra large because I'm kind of 6'2", so I like to spread out and sleep with my hands above my head, stuff like this. And you know what? I'll accept the fact that it's slightly bigger and slightly bulkier to pack because it still actually packs quite small.
I actually think the sleeping mat's the most important thing.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah. So it took me a while, a bit of procrastination, because it was going to be it was a fair chunk of money to put into it, and then I ummed and ahed and sort of worked out the costs, and I was like, do you know what? That amount that I'm going to spend on a mat is actually equivalent to about 2 nights maybe in a B&B. Yeah. So, and I'm going to do this for much more than just 2 nights. Yeah. I'm going to hopefully use this bit of kit for like 5, 6, 7 years. So I'm going to invest in, a good quality mat. Yeah. And that cost actually then works out kind of like £10 a night, maybe at the most. And this is my man maths kind of coming into play there, but it works. And the same with the sleeping bag. I took my time, I spoke to other friends who sort of camping, and ended up thinking, like, what's the sort of seasons that I'm going to be camping in? Is it cold? Is it wet? What's more important to me, warmth when I'm sleeping or something that packs really small? And I was like, I went down the whole ultra lightweight, ultra tiny route, like I said, with a tiny mat, and I got a super tiny lightweight sleeping bag, and it was really bloody cold. And I was like, this isn't good for me. So take a step back. I mean, and I'm a warm sleeper, and that's going to bring me to my 3rd thing in a moment. Ended up with a sleeping bag that I'm pretty comfortable with, that's warm in pretty much most of the year round when I'm sleeping. Packs down pretty small, not massively tiny, but it works for me. And
I've got a spring down sleeping bag, which sort of seems to cover me for most. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And is yours similar or
that kind of like 5 to 6 degree comfort temperature? I've gone with down for the bag that I tend to use the most. I've got synthetic bags as well if I'm going to go kind of in winter when it's more likely to get wet. Just because it makes it easier to dry them afterwards. But it's I've also got the enormous mountain 4-season down bag
if you need it.
I need it, which doesn't pack down that small, but I'm going to be super comfy. So when I'm like up at this pond, like in January, like I was this year, I was in that bag in my little tarp, snug as a bug in a rug. It was lush. you know.
And so, and you're under a tarp. You're not under. I've got a little Gore-Tex bivy bag.
Yeah.
What do you use?
So I've got a super tiny bivy bag, not Gore-Tex, but I think it's like Event or something like that.
Yeah.
I've got a tiny tarp that packs, again, pretty small, like Coke can small.
Yeah.
But that's quite stretchy, but it's really good. It keeps the wind off you most of the time.
Yeah.
It keeps any weather off you. Then I've got like a slightly bigger tarp that sort of pitches up. You're supposed to use trekking poles because it's kind of like a walker's tarp. I don't have any trekking poles, so I bought started off buying carbon fibre tubes and making my own carbon fibre poles. But then carbon fibre poles are black. I'm getting up somewhere with no general residual lighting, in the dark. Might have had a beer, and what happened was I ended up stepping on the poles and snapping them, and that happened like once bitten, twice shy, 2 times. You know, after 2 times, I was like, right, back to alloy poles.
Yeah.
The difference in weight saving was minimal, and if I stand on them, I'm not going to snap them, cause myself some problems.
I've seen a few people. You can put your bike wheel on, can't you?
Yes,
You can build your tarp around
yeah.
that, or you can use, take a bit of climbing gear with you, and you can hang it off a rock, or you can do all sorts of things, can't you?
But it's just as it happens to be, predominantly the places I go, there's not a lot of overhead stuff that you can kind of hang off. Bloody good pegs. So I ended up going for some that are basically like titanium nails.
Yeah.
Just because whatever the ground condition, I'm going to be able to get them in the ground. You know, I don't want things.
That's really important, isn't it? That's,
so I mentioned, that's the shelter, and then I've got some slightly bigger tents if I go with my boy.
Yeah.
We take him on the bike sometimes, and that's kind of fun in its own way, but very different to if I'm just doing like a one-nighter or a multi-nighter by myself or with mates. So that's kind of like the shelter. We talked about the mat, we talked about the sleeping bag, and so I'm going to say so sleeping bag's 3A.
You've got 2 more things to
bring.
I'm
going for 3B. I'm going for 3B
okay,
as well. So 3B is a silk sleeping bag liner.
Oh, I've got one as well, which is fantastic.
So it's really good for many reasons. 1, you get a bit of warmth. 2, if you're a hot sleeper like me and you get a bit sweaty, it's kind of nice to have that barrier between yourself and the man-made fabric of the sleeping bag. It's much easier to clean a liner than it is to clean a sleeping bag. So that's my 3B. I'd say really look, and it's got to be silk. It can't be like a silk or cotton mix because you lose out there.
I've taken the silk sleeping liner and used that as my bivy bag exclusively with a decent duvet jacket. You know, actually they're quite. They give you a lot of range, don't they? You get a lot out of them.
They do, and it's like one piece of kit doing more than one thing. You know, it's there if it's super warm, superb, and they do generally pack pretty small. Where are we now? 4.
Come on, 4. Yeah. 4. You squeezed a lot into 3A
and 3B.
Squeeze a lot into
3A and 3. So I would say a woolly hat.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You're known for your knitwear.
I love knitwear. For many reasons, which I won't digress. But a woolly hat because, again, going back to the multi-purpose thing, if you're in summer when it's kind of like late at night and then early morning for the sun to drop and rise, you can just pull the brim over your eyes and you can get an extra hour or 2 skip in the morning. If you're a little bit chilly at night, just put that hat on your head. It'll help you, genuinely will help you sleep through the night. And in the morning when you kind of wake up and you're having a brew and looking out over kind of everything that you survey, you'll be surprised how fresh it can feel. So just having that woolly hat to pop on kind of helps then.
I'm a multiple buff man. Oh, that's my thing. I carry at least 3 or 4 of those.
Really?
Man of many buffs. So cooking kit, you've got to have some. Do you take a stove with you?
Yeah. So I'm going to include cooking kit. I'm going to go for 5 as the whole thing.
Yeah.
And again, this is kind of
so what's in that kit?
Iterations. I use gas now. When I used to motorcycle camping, I used to use petrol because I had a petrol tank to hand, so I could use a petrol stove. Cycling, I don't have petrol to hand, so I use a gas, little gas canisters, and a small burning stove, gas stove. I started off with like an ultralight one about the size of your thumb. That was a very focused sort of pencil of heat, and I just used to go very, very, very light. So pencil or thumb size stove, just a mug, a titanium mug, because enamel would burn. I used to just boil the water in the mug and then make my brew in that. Or if I wanted to have a dehydrated meal, I could use that water there. But then I kind of got fed up with having coffee in the morning that tasted of whatever I'd eaten for tea the night before, because you could never quite get that curry or noodle flavour out of the mug. So I was like, right, I'm going to allow myself a little luxury. So I bought a collapsible kettle, which kind of thought maybe it's a gimmick, but I tell you now, it works. Yeah. It's phenomenal. Yeah, it packs down super flat. Will fit in a small bike packing bag, and it's kind of moved from the luxury treat item into sort of like the necessity.
Yeah. Because
it just your mug then doesn't taste of whatever you've eaten the night before. You can make a nice cup of tea or a nice cup of coffee, and any residual water you've got left in your kettle is nice to have a wash with. Have I got one left?
Oh, no, you're done.
Damn it! I was going to talk about a towel.
Go on, tell me what else. Oh, you take a towel with you?
Yeah, a small
packable
towel.
Yeah.
Because after you've had that freshen up in the morning, it's just nice to dry your face off, dry your hands off. If you've got a damp tarp or tent or bivvy bag, wipe over with the towel.
Now I'm getting one of my buffs to do that. Because my buffs are really multi-purpose.
Ah, okay.
So hang on, you're right. With cooking for me, I was a Trangier person for a long time. I used to do all my touring with a Trangier, and then I'm Jetboil now because it packs down really nice and small. I could never get those little gas things to work in especially in windy conditions at the top of a hill. I really struggle with that. But you can take a nice foil protector, can't you?
Yeah. Or just sit in the way of the wind.
Yeah.
You know.
So you talked a bit about getting out and it being good for just sort of resting and relaxing and kind of and mental health. And I'm guessing wild camping is a similar thing as well. That you get the bike and you get so how does that? It's really important for you, isn't it? Being out in nature and what does it mean for you?
Well, that's a massive question. What does it mean for me? So the bike allows me and anyone else who's cycling to be in the environment at a slightly quicker pace than walking, but a far slower and more involved period than if you were driving in a car or a passenger in a car. And what the wild camping allows me to do, or even camping at kind of like remoter sites that are legit, allows me to do is to kind of take that feeling of experience and being in the landscape, in the environment, and really spend time in it. And allow my mind and body to kind of just slow down a little bit more. And that's really important, I feel, more now. And again, this might sound a little cliche, but it's not meant to be. I feel now we have so much of pressures, work, life, media, just push, social media, just like push all the time. And it's nice to be able to just go, I'm just going to slow things down a little bit. And be in this place, watch the birds, listen to the birds. It's just being able to sit there and it be quiet enough without any background noise, without any background engines, without any background music, without any, background advertising going on. Just listen. And sometimes there's no sound, and sometimes there's birdsong, sometimes there's sheep, cows, whatever. But you're giving yourself the opportunity to kind of feel and be in that. And that's a nice thing. Even, and this is the sound of rain on the fly sheet, especially if it's rain that is going to pass, that's always nice. If it's rain that doesn't pass, well, it's generally not too bad. You can dry kit out when you get home. But it's allowing yourself that time to be in those places. And I have 3 personal rules. And the third one is leave the place nicer than you found it.
So that's really the etiquette of it.
Yeah. And so that's kind of like, that's tied to everything in life. That's not just wild camping, that's with work, that's with, if I'm just out and about, whatever. Leave somewhere nicer than you found it. And so just being able to have a sort of a look around where I am. And if there's litter there, I'll pick it up and I'll take it out.
Yeah, so it means taking your litter out, but then you'd go that extra mile, is what you're saying. Go,
And if there's other stuff lying around, I can't do it all sometimes, but I'll have a bloody good go, and that kind of, that makes you feel good about doing it. And I think it's important, it sort of aligns with having respect for where you are. The thing about nature, we tend to speak in this Western world of, there's nature and there's humans. Well, actually, we are all nature, and there should be like that just level playing field of respect for both sides. And so why would I not want to care for this thing that has you know, that I have been in and taken, you know, I've taken advantage of where it is by sleeping there, or, you know, filtering the water, or swimming, or, you know, whatever, cycling through it. Why should I not want to provide some form of, you know, emotional engagement and payback by trying to care for it? You know, and I think that's really important to me individually. So
no, it's really lovely. I that's what I particularly loved about that camping spot is we watched the stars come out, the sunset, the stars come out, watched the sun come up the following morning. There were martins flying over that lake. We all kind of went for a swim in the lake. I mean, it's just lovely, isn't it? You get that sense of connection.
You do, and yet it's, you know, it's an industrial, you know, post-industrial site. You can see industrial waste all around, but time has passed, and, you know, the land has kind of reclaimed it a little bit. So balance is kind of coming back a little bit, which is really nice. And then, you kind of take yourself back out from that, and you're back in the known world almost.
I tell you, if I was going to do that again, though, we could have done with more lighting on the way in, because that rocky path that took us up there, we had a few spills of, you know, people hitting rocks and falling over in the middle of the night, but we got ourselves there.
We did, but and this is the other thing. So I mean, and I've been to that site quite a few times now. You know, we're probably knocking them towards double figures, but I still, getting there, there's still kind of deviations in the path at night, and I have to catch myself and like, am I going the right way? You know, there's quite a lot of gorse that grows over the area, and trying to find the right route in is initially tricky, and that to me is almost an appeal of the place, because it thins out. Not everyone's going to want to kind of go there at night. You're not massively far from a car park even, or from a road, but it's far enough, and there are enough kind of little natural things that make it a bit tricky to maybe navigate to, because what's on the ground doesn't necessarily equate to what's on a map, and that kind of goes back to my thing about going to camp places that I've cycled through before. You've got a bit of background familiarity. You know?
So it's good to suss it out before you get there. If somebody was going to go and do this for a first time, then that might be a good first bit of advice, is make sure you know where you're going. Perhaps you've checked it out. You haven't just found it on a map, and, you know, you've got a sense of where you're going.
Definitely. And you know, so you got a rough feel for the land. You know kind of roughly how far it is from home. You know what's your bailout plan if it all goes to hell in the middle of the night. What's your plan? Are you just going to sit through and ride it out, or are you going to go, do you know what, I'm done here, pack it all down, go home?
And what else do you say for people who fancy doing it? What other bits of advice would you give them?
Remember that you're going to need a poo at some point. You know, so it's up to you how long you can keep that poo in. It sounds funny, poo, isn't it? It's a funny topic, but it's really important, and this goes back to kind of like respect for the land.
Absolutely.
If you're an early morning person, take a poo trowel, take a Ziploc bag and your toilet paper, go somewhere, you know, there's loads of guidance online or whatever for where to sort of choose your ablutions, but go away from water courses, dig a hole, bury your poo, take your used paper back out in your Ziploc bag, don't just bury your paper, you know, and make sure you've got clean hands. It's little things like that. But
sorry, that's super essential, isn't it? Again, it's that caring for it's going in, being responsible, knowing what you're doing, looking after the landscape you're in. It's super important.
And you know, try to view it from someone else's perspective. If you were going to go somewhere camping, you wouldn't want to wake up in the morning and be like, oh, there's a turd. That's lovely, isn't it? You know, you don't want that. So
brilliant. So for you, let's just a couple of quick fire ones.
Go. Tell
us about what's your favourite Audax route? If people haven't done an Audax before, where would you? What's your favourite?
Oh man. So I would probably say ACB's Randonneur, which runs kind of around, well, sort of Wiltshire, Bristol, Somerset area. I probably got bits wrong there, but so that's a great one for me. It's 100k. It's fun. There's some nice stops for ice cream. That's where I kind of think I met sort of some of the people who I ended up then riding future Audaxes with, and just ended up being friends.
So that's Audax Club Bristol's Randonneur route. It's called 100k. That's a cool kit to get people started.
It's a great one. It's hilly but not too hilly. You know, it's not mega tricky. It's a pleasant route. There's plenty of things to see around you. It's quite quiet. That's probably the one I'd go for. The second one would be the Flapjack, which I mentioned before, which is chipping and wheelers.
Is that 100 or that's
100?
That's still 100k.
That's 100,
good.
I mean, there are other distances as well, but we're talking about sort of going and having a dabble. Go to the hundreds, and it's great to see more 50k routes coming up too as well as calendar events. I love a 50k ride. It's just about the right amount, particularly if it's hilly. Okay, next quick fire one.
Next quick fire one is we're not going to tell you where your places that we went to, but where's your favourite wild camping spot that takes us away from there? Where else would you?
Okay, so somewhere different. There's a spot that I found last year that's super easy to get to. It's basically off a canal towpath. It's pretty much a flat ride out to it. You are tucked away in some old woods. You're away from where people are going to be coming through walking their dogs. There's a chip shop and a pub not too far away, like a mile away. So if you want to kind of rock up late, have a bag of chips and then a drink if that's your bag, or a pre-bivvy poo, that's it's useful things to do. That's probably my nicest wild camping site again. But it's very easy to get to. It's probably like a round trip of maybe 20 miles at the most from the house for me. It doesn't have to be big. I don't have to be conquering mountains. I don't have to be doing that.
You talked about that first time you went out camping, wild camping. You went out by yourself, and kind of that weird sense of being out by yourself for the first night. But you now take loads of people out as well, don't you? You go and introduce people to it, or you take people to sites that you've found. So what does that, who do you take with you and why? Who's the kind of ideal partner? And what does it mean then waking up with them the next day?
So it kind of goes back to what we were talking a little bit about before, about with Audax you kind of find people at your own pace. And I think I kind of take people who have that similar pace in life to me out there. And there's no, what that means is there's no kind of like background. It doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, but it doesn't come into it, because they've got similar interests to me. And it's really nice, particularly if I'm taking someone to somewhere, the spot that we talked about, that's sort of my local go-to, to take someone there, that's going to sound so bloody judgmental, I'm allowing them into the space, but I'm not. What I'm doing is I'm sharing that with them, saying, look, this is a nice place, I think you will like this, and I want to show you this thing, I want to take you into this environment, I'm going to kind of make sure that you have a nicest experience as possible in that place. And then in the morning we'll share a brew, maybe have a swim, or even just talk. It's being sort of in that space where there isn't any judgment, there isn't any kind of like predetermined outcome. We've gone to do the thing, we've done the thing, and then we will return to home. But in the meantime, where we're in that space doing that thing, we're all in the same experience. It's very level. There's no one person greater than the other. It's sort of quite communal in that sense.
Gives you real space, doesn't it, and time to hang out together and do things. Listen, Tom, thanks very much for that. It's been really great getting an insight. And look, we've got to book another trip in soon.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be great.
Listen, thanks very much, man.
No worries. Cheers.
Okay, there you have it. Huge thank you for listening. That's the first episode of Can Do. More to come. Please do subscribe. I wanted to say a huge thank you to Tom, not just for sharing that first camping experience that still sticks in my mind, but also for coming and being part of this project. It's not the easiest thing to do and sit and be interviewed for something like this, so a huge thank you to him, and likewise to Matt Swaine for being such a great host. We'll hopefully be doing some more stuff together coming soon. I also wanted to thank Fergus Coyle for dropping everything and coming and doing the photo shoot with us, with Tom originally. And again, you can see some of those images both through his site, through our site, and especially if you watch the Can Do film on YouTube. Again, the link is in the description. And then also Ruben from Square Sun Studios for kind of helping me to kind of take that kind of concept and those assets and turn it into the film. He's done a great job, and there's a couple of quite moving moments in there, so yeah, that's great. And then also a thank you to Surgeon's Girl for the music. I don't know if you know Surgeon's Girl's music. She's doing some amazing things. Electronic artist based in Bristol, done some pretty major recent projects nationally and internationally, and very appreciative for her help. And hope you'll join us again soon. Check the links in the description. Like, subscribe, follow, share, all of those great things. Most of all, have fun.